Wyoming Territory, August 1887. The rain had not let up for hours, beating down on the plains like it meant to wash the whole world away. Noah Briggs spotted her first from the saddle, slumped by the edge of the wagon trail, soaked through and barely moving. He pulled his horse up sharp, boots hitting the mud as he jumped down and ran to her. Her dress clung to her like wet paper, mud up to her knees, long hair plastered to her face. She was breathing, but just barely. "Miss?" Noah knelt beside her, brushing the hair from her cheek. Her skin was ice cold. "Hey. Can you hear me?" She did not answer. Her lips were blue. He glanced back at his horse, at the heavy gray sky, and then without another second of thought, he scooped her up in his arms. Her head dropped against his chest, limp as a doll. Noah mounted with her in his lap, careful not to jostle her too much, and kicked his horse into a gallop toward the small ranch house he had built with his own 2 hands 3 years ago. She was still unconscious when he laid her on the bed in the back room, the only bed in the house. Rainwater dripped from her dress onto the wooden floor. He stripped off her wet boots and wrapped her in a wool blanket, then lit the stove and got it roaring. He sat beside her, elbows on his knees, watching the rise and fall of her chest like it might stop at any moment. He stayed there for hours, not moving, not blinking much either. The storm raged outside, wind clawing at the windows, but Noah never flinched. He just kept his eyes on her. When she finally stirred, it was near dawn. Her eyelids fluttered, and her fingers twitched beneath the blanket. Noah leaned forward. "You are safe now. You are at my place." She looked confused, her voice barely a whisper. "Where am I?" "Outside, Laramie. Found you on the trail. You passed out in the rain." She tried to push herself up, but winced and sank back onto the pillow. "You need to rest," he said, gently pressing her shoulder back. "You were near frozen." Her eyes met his. They were green beneath the dim light, sharp with fear and something else, something like shame. "I am Lucy Langford," she whispered. "Thank you for helping me." "Noah Briggs," he said. "You do not need to thank me." She blinked slowly, then looked away. "I did not mean to be out there. I was walking. I thought I could make it to Fort Sanders before nightfall. But then it rained." "You were not going to make it," he said, voice low. "Not in that dress. Not alone." Her hands clenched under the blanket. "I did not have a choice." He did not ask what she meant. He just sat there, watching her, and said, "You are safe now." Lucy slept most of that day. Noah kept quiet, moving slow through the house, chopping wood, boiling broth, checking the rain barrels. Every few hours he looked in on her. She did not stir. It was past sunset when she woke again, this time steadier. She sat up, clutching the blanket around her. Noah brought her a bowl of soup and set it on the bedside table. "Eat," he said. "You need it." She hesitated, then picked up the spoon with shaking fingers. She ate slow, her eyes watching him the whole time. "I had $2 on me," she finally said. "I am not trying to take anything from you. I do not want your money." "Then what do you want?" Noah leaned back in the chair. "To know who you are." "What happened?" Lucy looked down into her bowl like it might have the answer. "I came from Cheyenne," she said. "I was working as a seamstress. Not much work lately. The woman I rented a room from tossed me out yesterday morning. Said she needed space for her cousin. I tried to find another place, but no one would take me in without payment up front." Noah said nothing. She went on, her voice rough. "I started walking. Thought I could reach the fort. I figured someone there might help me find work. I did not expect the storm." Noah nodded slowly. "And your family?" "Dead," she said. "All of them. Been gone since I was 14. That clamped something tight in his chest. He knew what it was to lose everyone. "You can stay here as long as you need," he said. Her eyes widened. "Why?" "Because no one should be left out in the rain like that." She stared at him for a long moment, then looked away again. "I will work for it. I can mend clothes. Help around the place." "You do not owe me anything," he said, but his voice was softer now. "I want to." He nodded. "All right." The first few days passed quiet. Lucy stayed in bed the first 2, then began to move around the house and borrowed clothes from the trunk of Noah's late sister. She swept the floor without being asked, patched his shirts, boiled beans for supper. He never asked questions. She never offered more. By the 4th day, she had color back in her cheeks, and that evening she stood on the porch with him, watching the sun drop behind the hills. The air was still damp, but the clouds had cleared. "You live here alone?" she asked. Since my sister passed. She was all I had left. Lucy nodded, hugging the shawl around her. You are kind. Noah looked at her. I am not. You are, she said. You saved me. He looked out over the land. I just could not leave you there. She turned to face him. No one's ever done that for me before. He met her eyes. Well, they should have. She blinked, then turned back toward the hills. There was a silence between them, not empty, but full of something neither of them knew how to name yet. Noah cleared his throat. I can build a wall across the back room. That way you can have space that is yours. Lucy smiled just a little. That would be nice. That night, after she went to bed, Noah sat out on the porch, staring at the stars. He felt something stir in his chest, something he had not felt in years. He told himself it was nothing, but he could not stop thinking about the way she looked at him, or how she smiled when he handed her a cup of coffee that morning, or how she had said his name, soft and grateful. And he knew, deep down, that this was not nothing, not even close. The first time Lucy stepped into the barn, the air still held the sharp tang of old hay and saddle soap. Dust floated in sunbeams that angled down through the slats. Noah was brushing down his gelding, sleeves rolled past his elbows, forearms streaked with sweat and grit. She lingered near the door, fingers curled around the frame, watching him move with quiet purpose. That horse of yours, she said after a moment. He's got a good look about him. Noah didn't turn. He's steady. Doesn't spook easy. She stepped in then, careful not to startle the mare in the next stall. What's his name? Boaz. Like the fella from Scripture? He nodded once, then glanced toward her. You read the Bible much? Some, she said. Wasn't much else to do in the boarding house. There was one copy, pages half torn, but I got through it more than once. Noah gave Boaz a final pat, then set the brush aside. Care for horses? Never had one of my own, but I took to them fast enough when I did laundry for a man who broke them for a living. He used to let me feed the young ones. Noah leaned on the stall door, watching her face. If you're comfortable with it, I could use help mucking out the pens tomorrow. She gave a small, dry laugh. I've had worse jobs. She stepped closer to the gelding, her hand brushing his neck. He's gentle. He trusts slow, Noah said. But when he does, it sticks. Lucy didn't answer, just kept her hand on the horse's mane, her brow furrowed like she was thinking on something she wouldn't share just yet. That evening, as she boiled coffee over the stove, she glanced up and said, What happened to your sister's things? Noah looked up from the corner where he was whittling. Packed them away after the funeral. Couldn't bring myself to burn them. Couldn't keep them out, either. Lucy stirred the grounds with the handle of a spoon, the steam rising into her face. She leave anything you still use? He shook his head. Not much. She was younger. Liked ribbons and music. Didn't suit the place after she was gone. Lucy poured 2 mugs and brought one to him. Did she play something? No, he said. Just like the sound of it. Used to hum in the evenings. Mostly waltzes. Lucy sat across from him, fingers wrapped around the tin mug. I sang once. In a church choir in Kansas. Before everything changed. He waited, but she didn't go further. Instead, she sipped and looked toward the window, where the last of the light caught on the rim of the hills. Noah cleared his throat. If you want, there's a harmonica tucked in that chest by the window. Belonged to my father. Lucy's eyes flicked toward it, then back to him. You play? Not well. I'd like to hear it sometime. He nodded. Maybe. The fire popped once, sharp and sudden. Neither of them flinched. Later that week, Lucy took to sitting on the back stoop in the mornings, peeling apples for drying. Noah came out with a bucket of feed, paused when he saw her, then sat beside her without asking. You always peel them like that? He asked. Like what? Long strips. All in one go. Habit, she said. My mother used to say the longer the peel, the longer the life. He watched the blade slide beneath her fingers. Then you'll live a good while yet. She glanced sideways at him, one corner of her mouth lifting. You think so? I do. She folded a slice of apple into her mouth, chewing slowly. You don't talk much. Noah shrugged. Never saw the point in saying what doesn't need saying. She nodded. I've known men who filled silences just so they wouldn't have to sit in them. He looked at her then, really looked. You don't strike me as afraid of quiet. I'm not, she said. It's the noise that unsettles me. They sat like that for a while, the chickens scratching nearby, the sky stretching wide above the cottonwoods. When she stood at last and gathered the peels into her apron, Noah took the basket of sliced fruit from her hands. "I'll set these out to dry," he said. She nodded. "Thank you." That night, Noah lay awake longer than usual, the sound of her humming drifting from the other room. Not a hymn, not a song he knew, just a slow tune, soft and steady. He closed his eyes and let it settle deep into him, like rain sinking into dry earth. Harvest light stretched long across the fields in thin, amber strokes. By then, a rhythm had grown between them, not spoken, not agreed upon, but understood. Lucy rose early, tied her hair back without pins, and carried water from the well before the sun cleared the ridge. Noah worked the cattle fence through the mornings, hammering new rails where the rot had taken hold. They didn't speak often during the tasks, but when they did, it came easy. That afternoon, Noah returned from a ride with a fresh scrape along his cheekbone and dried blood on his knuckles. He tethered Boaz, then stepped into the kitchen where Lucy was rolling dough across the scrubbed table. "Gate post splintered," he said, wiping his hands on a cloth. "Took the better part of 2 hours to lever it out." She looked up from the flour-covered board. "Your face, what happened?" He touched the side of his cheek like he'd forgotten it. "Fence rail snapped. I wasn't standing far enough off." Her brow furrowed. "You need to clean that. It'll fester, left alone." He opened the cupboard without answering and pulled down the tin where she kept the vinegar and linen strips. She reached for the cloth before he could, dipping it in the vinegar, then stepped closer. "Hold still," she said. He did. Her fingers were steady, her touch light, but sure. She worked quietly, dabbing at the scrape until the blood lifted and the flesh beneath ran clean. "You've done this before," he said. "Too many times." He nodded once. "You take to things quick." She folded the cloth over and rinsed it. "I had to." The silence that followed was not stiff, but full of things neither of them quite knew how to say. Finally, she stepped back and handed him the cloth. "That'll do," she said. "Keep it dry." He held her gaze a moment longer than he meant to. "I will." That evening, Noah brought home a sack of cornmeal from town. Lucy took it without a word and baked a batch of hoe cakes, crisped golden at the edges. They ate by lamplight, the only sound the scrape of cutlery and the occasional creak of the wind outside. Halfway through the meal, Lucy set her fork down. "There was a girl," she said, "back in Cheyenne. Her name was Ruth. She worked the same shop I did. She married last year man from Nebraska, a rancher." Noah looked up. "Last letter I had from her. She said she was learning to churn butter. Said she was terrible at it." "What made you think of her?" Lucy's eyes didn't leave the wall. "You brought home cornmeal. It was her favorite." Used to say it reminded her of home. Noah didn't offer comfort. He just listened. "I never answered her last letter," Lucy added. "You still could." She shook her head. "I don't think she lives there anymore." Neither of them spoke for a time. Then Noah stood and gathered the plates. He didn't ask for help. She let him take them. The next morning, Lucy stood by the fence with a basket of eggs resting on her hip. The hens had started laying regular again, and she'd taken to checking before breakfast. She looked over as Noah stepped out of the barn, wiping his hands on his trousers. "There's a frost coming," she said. "I can feel it in the air." He nodded. "I'll bring the rest of the squash in today." She shifted the basket and leaned against the fence. "Would you mind if I tried sewing again?" He squinted toward her. "You have a mind to sew?" "I thought I'd mend some things first. That shirt of yours, the one with the torn cuff, it could use a few stitches." He nodded. "All right. I'll need thread and needles." "There's a general store in town," he said. "I'll ride in tomorrow." She smiled, not the kind that reached wide, but the kind that settled warm behind the eyes. "Thank you," she said. He tipped his head. "You're welcome." By dusk, the wind had shifted. Not harsh, just colder. Lucy pulled the shutters closed and lit the lamp early. She found the torn shirt folded at the bottom of the chest and laid it across her knees, fingers tracing the frayed seam. When Noah stepped back inside after tending the animals, he paused at the doorway, watching her in the low lamplight. "You look like you've done that 1,000 times," he said. She didn't look up. "I have." "You miss it?" "No," she said, "but it feels like something I can still do. Something that makes sense." He nodded. "It suits you." She didn't answer, but her hands stilled for a moment before she picked the shirt up again. That night, she left the mended shirt folded on his chair by the hearth. He found it after she'd gone to bed, the stitches precise, the cuff neat and straight again. He held it for a while, the fabric warm from the fire, then looked toward the closed door of her room. Nothing was said, but something had shifted. Quiet, steady, like the land turning under the first touch of snow. The first snow came early. Lucy stood at the window, one hand resting on the sill, watching as flakes drifted slow and straight, silent as breath. They clung to the fence rails, softened the edges of the pasture, turned the roof pale. The stove behind her hissed and popped, heat rising in waves, but she still pulled the shawl tighter across her shoulders. Noah came in with his coat dusted white and boots heavy with slush. He stamped them clean just inside the door, then hung his hat on the peg without a word. His cheeks were red from wind, his eyes sharp from the cold. "I brought in the last of the feed sacks," he said, unbuttoning his coat. "We'll make it through fine if the snow keeps steady." Lucy turned toward him, her fingers still curled over the windowsill. "Will it hold?" "It'll hold," he said. "I spent the morning checking the roof seams. No leaks." She nodded, then stepped away from the window. "The preserves are lined up in the cellar. I marked the jars that didn't seal right." His eyes met hers. "You did that careful. I like knowing what's where." The quiet stretched, not tense, just full. She crossed the room, passing close enough to feel the cold still clinging to him. He didn't move. "I found something in that old trunk," she said. It was tucked beneath a quilt, looked like a letter. "From your sister." Noah's shoulders shifted, just slightly. "I remember it. She wrote about a dance in town. Said she made you go. Said you didn't speak to anyone, but still managed to step on her foot during the cotillion." His mouth tilted, just barely. "She never let me forget it." Lucy watched him for a moment. "You miss her?" He nodded once. "Every day." She reached behind her to the small table and picked up the folded paper, then held it out. "Would you like it kept somewhere special?" Noah took it, smoothed the crease with his thumb. "I'll keep it in the drawer by the bed." She let go of it easily. It felt like it belonged there. Later, while she kneaded bread on the work table, he lingered nearby, sharpening the draw knife with slow, even strokes. The sound of steel on stone grounded the room. "When I was a child," she said, her voice low and steady, "my father used to whistle while he worked. Always the same tune, Sweet Betsy from Pike. I can still hear it sometimes, when I'm alone." Noah paused, blade half lifted. "That's a lonesome song." He sang it like it meant something brighter. He set the draw knife down. "You think of them often?" "Only when I let myself." He leaned back against the counter. "I tried not to after the war. But things have a way of following you quiet." Her hands stilled in the dough. "You served?" He nodded. 6 months at the end. Cavalry out of Fort Leavenworth. By the time I got there, most of the fighting was done. I saw more sickness than bullets. She looked over. "You never mentioned that." "No reason to before." She held his gaze. "There is now." He didn't answer, but she saw something shift behind his eyes. That night, they sat by the fire, neither of them working, neither of them reaching for distraction. Lucy's chair was close to the hearth, her knees drawn up beneath the hem of her skirt. Noah sat across from her, his hands clasped loosely, the flames casting long shadows across his face. "I used to think I was meant to be alone," she said, eyes on the coals. "That people like me don't get to stay anywhere long." "You're not alone now," he said. She looked up slowly. "Are not?" He leaned forward, elbows on knees. "You've been here near 2 months. This house is quieter when you're not speaking in it. I noticed that." She folded her hands in her lap. "I don't want to be a burden." "You're not." The fire cracked. Outside, wind pressed against the house in slow, steady waves. Noah stood, crossed the space between them, and held out his hand. She looked at it for a long breath before placing her own in his. He pulled her to her feet with care, like she might break if he moved too quick. He didn't kiss her, not yet, just brought her hand to his chest and held it there, over the steady thrum of his heart. She didn't speak. She just leaned into the warmth of him and let herself be held. And when the wind howled louder, the walls of the cabin held firm. By late November, the snow had deepened into drifts that curled against the eaves and swallowed the fence posts whole. The days shortened, the light thinning by mid-afternoon. Inside, the house grew warmer in its quiet ways, firelight flickering across the floorboards, the smell of boiled potatoes and salt pork, the soft creak of the rocking chair Lucy had started using when she hemmed garments near the window. Noah had begun carving small things in the evening's handles for the kitchen drawers, new buttons for his coat, where the brass had worn thin. He didn't say much while he worked, but the way he settled into the room beside her made it feel like something shared. One night, after a long hush broken only by the hiss of the fire, Lucy set her sewing aside and looked over at him. "Did you ever think about marrying?" she asked. Noah rested his knife on his thigh and met her eyes. "Once, before the war." She didn't press. Her hands folded in her lap. "She was the preacher's daughter," he said after a long moment. "We walked together after church for a while. I was 19. She had a laugh that made you forget everything else. What happened? She married someone else while I was gone. I don't blame her." Letters were slow, and I was slower. Lucy nodded, her gaze steady. "People grow afraid of waiting." He gave a quiet breath of agreement. "Have you?" "No," she said, "but I've grown tired of leaving." He set the wood aside and crossed the room, kneeling next to her chair, hands resting on the worn apron she still wore from the day's work. "I'm not asking you to stay out of obligation," he said. She reached up, touched the edge of his jaw where the stubble had grown soft. "You don't need to ask." Snow tapped at the windows then, light and easy. The next morning, she rode with him into town for the first time. They took Boaz in the cart, bundled in fur-lined coats, Lucy in one of Noah's old scarves, her cheeks pink from the cold. The town was quiet this time of year. Most windows shuttered, the boardwalks dusted white. They stopped at the mercantile for kerosene and salt, and Lucy picked out a length of calico in soft green. "For curtains," she said when Noah raised a brow. "The sun will come back someday." They passed the post office before heading back, where a folded letter waited addressed in careful script. Lucy turned it over in her hands. "From Ruth," she murmured. Noah didn't ask what it said. He held the reins while she read, the sky pale above them, the snow untouched beyond the wheel tracks. "She's in Iowa now," Lucy said quietly. 3 children. Says she sings while she churns now." They rode the rest of the way in silence, but it wasn't heavy. That night, she hung the green calico over the front window. It was simple, but the way it shifted in the lamplight made the house feel changed. Noah stood behind her, hands in his pockets. "I've been thinking," he said. "About spring." She turned. "I could add on to the house," he said. "Another room off the kitchen. More light, more space." She didn't answer right away, just stepped closer. "I'd like that," she said. He reached for her hand. "Lucy." She met his eyes. "I want you here. Not just through winter. Not just until you find something better." She didn't look away. "I stopped looking for better the day you found me." He kissed her then. Not rushed, not uncertain. Just steady and full of everything they hadn't said until now. They married 2 weeks later, in the parlor of the town's small chapel. The minister's wife lent Lucy a ribbon for her hair, and the ring Noah gave her had belonged to his mother, plain gold, worn thin at the edges. The winter sun broke through the clouds as they stepped outside, and the snow beneath their boots glittered. Back at the ranch, Lucy placed her sewing things in the corner of what used to be the back room, now theirs. Noah hung her coat beside his by the door. Every small act felt like a promise made and kept. The wind howled some nights, strong enough to rattle the shutters, but the walls held. And inside, there was warmth, and bread rising slow on the hearth, and the sound of 2 voices, sometimes quiet, sometimes full of laughter, filling the space between heartbeats. Years later, folks in Laramie would still say you could hear music in the evenings from the Briggs place, sometimes a soft tune hummed at the edge of twilight, sometimes the scrape of a fiddle Noah picked up again after Lucy found it beneath the floorboards. But mostly, it was the sound of 2 people who had built something out of silence and storm and steadiness. And it held. Always.